The proposed bill could help cover certain costs for women with an increased risk of breast cancer.
And medical experts are emphasizing the importance of getting screened. Emily Riley explains why the bill came about and who it would reduce costs for.
The bill was first introduced after a breast cancer survivor shared her story with the Wisconsin State Assembly about how her cancer was first detected.
She was then asked to do an ultrasound, which came up positive for breast cancer. Now, the trick of this was she had been told mammogram would cover these screenings and detect breast cancer, and this is something that most women believe.
Roughly 40% of women have dense breast tissue, according to the CDC. Detecting cancer for women in the demographic typically requires extra screenings. The bill is aiming to cut out-of-pocket expenses for the 40% of women who have dense breast tissue and may need more than just a mammogram.
What I've seen, at least in the Fox Valley, you're looking at anywhere from $500 to over $1,000 for the mammogram. Then if you follow up with an ultrasound or an MRI, you're looking at additional costs.
Current state law does require health insurance policies to provide 2 mammograms for women with certain criteria and 1 annual screening to women over 50 at no out-of-pocket patient costs.
And the information gleaned from getting that mammogram and getting screened early and on time is very important in terms of detecting a cancer early. If we find a cancer on a screening mammogram that's small, that you can't even feel yet, it can drastically change the treatment and the prognosis for that cancer.
Senator Cabral Guevara says she hopes the Wisconsin Senate and Assembly Committee will vote on the bill so patients can access zero-cost additional screenings by the end of the year. Emily Riley, Action 2 News.